inevitable because, you know, we can make little mistakes. Here's a very interesting tidbit. Once we're done and we turn this thing off, there is a special ultraviolet light that turns on. And guess what ultraviolet light does to bacteria and to viruses? It kills them. Guess what the best ultraviolet light is that God made for us? The sun. Did you know that if you're outdoors, you don't get any of this stuff? If you swab a rock in the forest, there's no COVID there. There's no influenza. So part of it is because we live indoors, and most of us live because we're lived in civilized society, modern society, we have issues with filtration and air handling. So this is BSL 2. Here's BSL 3. Now look, with risk-based enhancements. Now look, there is an airtight entry. Notice you come in, you close the door, and then you get to wash or whatever, then you get to open this door so you can come in. Notice, this guy's wearing a semi-spacesuit. You still have your hood, you have your autoclave, but notice, the air comes in through a handling system that is meant to clean the air even before it gets out into the general public, into nature. Okay? That's BSL 3. What they had in Wuhan was BSL 4. This is where they play with the bad things. Okay? Again, controlled access. They're wearing a full-on spacesuit, and look at this. They decontaminate when they come in and out, and then you have to basically strip down, and then you can go on your way after you've kind of cleaned everything out. That's a BSL 4 lab. That's what they had in Wuhan. Okay? They do experiments on things like MERS in this environment, but sometimes that air handling, things don't get filtered out, things get dispersed into nature, and then people can get those things. So that's why when you see these things happening, be very careful. Brother Keith. Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you know where the CDC headquarters is? Atlanta. So they probably have BSL 4 labs here in Atlanta. So be very careful when you hear of a lab leak, especially because you guys live here at the epicenter. Question? What ends up happening is, so some people think that double masking is good. What ends up happening is, inevitably what ends up happening is you end up breathing in your own CO2. You become hypercarbic. So you're not really exchanging air. God meant for us to breathe oxygen, not our own air that we just exhaled, only for it to be re-inhaled. So these P100 filters, you can actually get these, anyone know? Home Depot. You can get these also at Harbor Freight. They have these, but they're in usually the paint section. Anything that has to do with any toxic substances or safety gear, that's where you will find these. And these are called respirators. That's what you want here. Question? Mm-hmm. So you have to remember, a lot of these protocols are meant to kind of, they're looking at, they're making a gamble to say how much coverage can I make? What's the most cost-effective way to be able to screen and to protect as many people without having to spend a small fortune for each one of these? So I remember during the height of COVID, people who were in the know actually went to the hardware stores and bought their own P100s. They bought their own P100s. Some people even got their own mini oxygen circulators. So they got their own units for themselves because they couldn't trust that these were good enough. And remember, this is your health. And if you're taking care of patients right there in front line, you have to make sure that you're protected for all this stuff. And I remember my brother, he's an ER doctor. I actually had an extra one of this. I mailed it to him. I said, you're on the front line, so you need to be able to, I want to make sure you're taken care of.
How many times can you use it?
Oh, these?
Yes.
I don't recall. I did not prepare. I didn't look that up. Sorry. You got me. You got me with that one, brother. I'm gonna have to get back to you with that one. Yeah. Yeah. You can change this pink disc. You can change that out. Yeah. You can change that out. Okay. I hope you guys find this helpful. Okay. And very enlightening. Okay. So, the New England Journal of Medicine, when they wrote an article in 2020, they said wearing a mask is tantamount to rubbing a rabbit's foot. Okay, so the New England Journal of Medicine, there was an editorial. They said wearing a mask, like especially the surgical mask, is the same thing as rubbing a rabbit's foot, hoping that you won't get it. Whoa. Yes, I don't know. So, Brother Elias is talking about Luc Montagnier. How many of you guys have heard of Luc Montagnier? Okay. Luc Montagnier is a Nobel laureate. So, okay, Nobel laureate means you won the Nobel Prize. And he was warning about COVID way back in 2020. And what was interesting, I remember they fact-checked him. They said, oh, what he's saying is wrong. Okay? How do you fact-check a Nobel laureate? Okay, but here's the kicker. What did he get his Nobel Prize for? He discovered the HIV virus, the virus that causes AIDS. He was the one that figured it out. There's 3 of them. So he's like a super master virologist. And you're going to fact check a super master virologist? And you're not even a virologist yourself? So what they did is there is people that will discount. So when you're looking at your information, look to see what is their qualification, right? Do you want somebody who went, no offense, but went to Phoenix for a degree? Or do you want them to go to Emory? Do you see what I'm saying? Excuse me? Touche. I love that.
What did he say?
He said you're the equal amount of debt, like financial debt, whether or not you go to Phoenix or Emory. That's a good one. Oh man. Okay.
One more question.
Okay, question.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Wu?
Dr. Who?
Wu.
No.
W. He was the person that went to Wuhan
Okay.
and the outbreak of COVID-19.
Okay.
They actually made a movie. Did you ever get a chance to see the movie? I had it at one time. I'll need to go back to some of my Rolodex, see if I can
Okay.
find it. This is 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But he was the first person to kind of alert the medical staff in Cleveland.
Is this a female Wu?
No.
There's a female Wu that actually came from China and actually was warning the West of what was coming. But I can't remember her name was Wu, but I remember there was a Chinese, she barely spoke any English.
Well, he's Chinese too, but
Yeah.
yes, he was there collecting stem cells, and that's when the outbreak occurred.
Okay.
And he was asked to go to one of the hospitals there. They had like 25 people there in the hospital, and they asked him to see if the stem cells would work on those people.
Okay.
And actually it did. But after that, a movie came out, but I don't think they circulated it at all.
Okay. So, continuing on, I want to give you a more practical way to deal with this. So, this is from Kellogg. The cold shower is one of the most powerful of all tonics. It creates an appetite for food and a disposition to and a capacity for both mental health, mental and muscular activity to a remarkable degree. This was 1900. This is 100 years ago. Over 100 years ago. So what is a cold shower? 55 to 68. Okay, that's a cold shower.
Give it to Sam and Elazar.
Okay, so what ends up happening is, if you take this cold shower, let's see if okay. So what happens is, how many of you guys have heard of hot cold baths? How many of you guys take hot cold baths? How many think you're crazy when you take one of those? Okay. So what happens with a hot cold bath, you get in, you can be like 99, 100, you're right here. And then for about a minute, you go down to this. At 30, well, as much as you can tolerate. And so what happens is you progressively get there. You work to that point. And so you go from hot to cold, to hot to cold. Why would you do something crazy like that? Okay, so it does what?
Boost your immune system.
Okay, so Brother Elias is saying it boosts your immune system. So I'm going to explain to you the mechanism of what actually happens. Okay? So what happens is these are blood cells. These are the different types of blood cells that are in your bloodstream. So you have a hemoblast, you can have lymphoid cells, myeloid cells. Blah, 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 blah. So here's red cells, and then these are all your white cells. These are your immune cells right here. Okay, so when you talk about white cells, these are specifically the cell types that are important in identifying viruses and fighting off infections. When you take a hot, cold shower, this is what happens. Usually what happens is these white cells leak through the blood vessel and they just hang out here in the tissues and they're not floating around in the bloodstream. Okay? When you take a hot, cold shower, you cause this to happen in reverse. So what happens is the white cells that are in the tissues start to make their way into the bloodstream to then help fight off the infection. That's the boost. Okay, so let me give it to you like this. Right now, in the city of Smyrna, does Smyrna have a police department? Okay, it's a pretty safe place here, right? Are the policemen circling and patrolling the streets right now? They could be. Where might we find them? Dunkin' Donuts.
Find them in the donut shop.
No. Or in the corner of the park, you know, like way back in the corner where nobody goes. Okay, this is just the honest truth, right? But if there's a school shooting, where are those cops?
The front line.
They are everywhere. That's kind of what happens that's why you torture yourself. 3 minutes hot, 1 minute cold. You do that. And what happens is, Brother Elias, you can probably attest to this. How many colds do you get a year? So what happens is,
sometimes I go to cold places and I feel that I will get a cold because I know my body. I take 3 hot and 3 cold shower.
Yep.
And the last one, the next morning I have nothing.
Yep. So this is an ordained and sustained way to actually fight off a lot of these colds. You can be exposed to 3 microns, 2 microns, 10 microns, and this is God's method for doing this. Okay? So here's the other element. There are cultures, especially like Siberia and like Nordic countries like Sweden, Netherlands and stuff like that. These people they cut a hole in the ice. You know it's cold. And they jump in. I'm like, what in the world? And then they come out and they're shivering and then they do it again. But these people, it's their custom, it's their culture. And what happens is their immune system is fully activated. And so you will see that those people have a different type of health versus the rest of us, myself included. 99 is not hot enough. 102, that's really nice. My wife says, it's like a sauna in there. And my wife's like, man, look at this place. I can't even see. That's what she always complains whenever I take a shower. And that's just the way I am. And again, I speak for myself, but I bet you there's other people who like that too. Because we live lives that are so comfortable, our immune system is hanging out at Dunkin' Donuts. Okay? Question?
What happens if you have the hot bath every day? You know, it's just like.
So you don't necessarily need to do it every day. There is how many of you guys have heard of Anthony Huberman and the Huberman Lab podcast? So there's a guy, there's a podcaster, his name is Anthony Huberman. He is a professor at Stanford, and what he does is he has gone through a lot of this literature and a lot of these other quasi-medical treatments. And he's actually put it all out there to try to help people understand it, and it's part of his public service. And what he's basically summarized, when you look through all the literature, you only need to do this 3 times a week. 3 times a week, that's all you need. You don't need to do it. You can torture yourself. You can do it as needed too. So, but part of it is, and some people, some of the protocols I came across, they would do a cold immersion for like 10 minutes. I was like, wow. It's like, wow. But, people worked themselves up to that. And so you can imagine how robust their immune system is because of it. And I think there was a question over here. Keith? Yeah. 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 Oh, exactly. And so why is this all important? Because if this is what we do to filter what comes into our lungs, what will we do to filter what comes into our minds? Notice what Philippians 4 says. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. That's your filter. That's your spiritual mask to filter what goes into you. Does that make sense? So that's ultimately the big teaching here, that when we look at filtration, we can easily do it for our breathing, but do we apply the same scrutiny, the same logic to the way we live our lives? The Bible, Paul gives this great filter in Philippians chapter 4. Notice here, this is 1 Chronicles 28:9. And thou, Solomon, my son, know thou the God of thy father, and serve him with a perfect heart and with a willing mind. For the Lord searcheth all the hearts and understandeth all the imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, and he will be found of thee, but if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever. So notice, God is in the business of making sure that we have been filtered and are worthy to be called sons and daughters of the Most High. Notice here, 1 Peter, very specific. Abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul, having your conversation honest amongst the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. So know that we can live a life because we've filtered out the bad that we see in the world around us. We can be in the world, but not of the world. Okay? And notice here, this is Jesus speaking now, Matthew 12. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places seeking rest and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return unto my house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it empty. So why would an unclean spirit leave a person and find it empty? Okay? Have we filled it with the necessary right things? Okay? find it empty, swept, and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh with himself 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. Okay? More wicked. Notice here what Jesus goes on to say. And they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of the man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. Why do you see society falling apart the way it is? This is part of the degradation of society. This is all engineered. How many of you guys have heard of Little Light Studios? Amen. Amen. This is a great ministry that's out there. So what they do is they have a bunch of different offerings that they have here. The one I was first introduced to here is the Magic Kingdom. How many of you guys have had a good steady diet of Disney? Oh, come on. Okay. Did you know that the Disney movies share one consistent theme across every single one? You ready for this? Rebellion. Did you know that? The Cinderella is rebelling against her stepmother. Ariel in Little Mermaid is rebelling against her father. You know, Aladdin is rebelling against the social order. Every single one is rebellion. You are teaching children how to rebel. I wonder why they're so rebellious when they're teenagers. Do you know that? So this one here is called Magic Kingdom, and that's about the issues with Disney. This one right here, The Dragon Revealed, this one's a good one. This one's on Kung Fu and martial arts. As you get higher up into the martial arts, you start getting into these very spiritual things. Early on, you're doing your kata, you're doing your forms and blah, 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 whatever, your kicks and everything. That's the lower level. But as you get higher up, you get into this weird mental, like seance kind of thing. And that the guy who was very advanced, he talks about what they're doing at the upper levels. The one that I would suggest to you is, how many of you guys have kids? Okay. This right here, I would highly recommend, maybe Pastor Sam, you can get a copy for the church and you can screen it for the kids to watch with the parents. This is called Replacement Gods. Okay? What happens is, right now, there are a lot of comic books that have been turned into movies. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is making billions right now. All these movies are making, Superman and everything. A lot of the themes are basically recycled right out of the Bible. For example, one of the ones that they feature in there, and I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it was the one that included Thor. Okay, so they talk about Thor, the god of thunder, right? Thor was cast out of Asgard. I think it was their version of heaven. So Thor was cast out of heaven, and he comes to earth to be, guess what? A hero. That's a retelling of which biblical theme? So what's happening is a lot of these themes that we see, we know to be truth in the Bible, are being recast and given to the children in a completely different way, and you're subtly undermining their foundation. This one here is called Controller. It's on video games. Here's the Controller number 2, and then here's on competitive Christianity. They have a whole series of different elements that are attacking the youth today. I highly recommend that as a church, we get this so that way you can actually screen this if you lack content to things to do in the afternoons, if you don't have an afternoon program. Popping one of these in and just realizing that I had no idea that that's why Kung Fu is bad. This would be a great way for you to improve your filter. So you can go from the simple paper cloth mask to maybe an N95 and then to a P100. Okay, you get a better understanding of how to filter and to know what is the good stuff to put into you. Okay? Job 33.